Hi there, today we're learning about while loops. So before we begin, let's back up and let's talk about loops in Java. So there are three main loops in Java. There's the while loop, there's the do while loop, and there's the for loop. Most of the time people usually use a for loop, but we're going to start with the while loop today. We're going to work on a demonstration called the Risky Jobs demo. And as you can see right here, we have a gentleman who is engaging in a risky job. He is a timber cutter. Or otherwise known as a lumberjack. This gentleman is cutting down a tree in Chicago, Illinois. This was outside of my apartment building, and I live on the third floor, and I just happened to see this guy one Saturday morning, and I had to capture him on the camera because what he was doing was really impressive. He's just going up and down this tree, and he's got a machete in his hand, and there's nothing, so there's no rope that's giving him support to protect him if he falls. So one of the reasons that we're talking about risky jobs is that the curriculum that I teach for programming at my high school, we also try to focus on careers and future careers and jobs that are out there, so we can get students to think about what they want to do after high school. So this obviously is an example of a very risky job. There's a very high mortality rate with timber cutters and lumberjacks. Of course, the thing that balances all this out is that usually with extremely risky jobs like this, they'll pay very well, even if the person has a low if the person does not have, like, let's say, a college background or a college degree or anything like that, jobs like these will pay very well because of the risk. I believe that the mortality rates for lumberjacks, it's 118 out of every 100,000 lumberjacks die each year. That's how risky it is. It's the number one riskiest job in America. Another risky job is fishermen. 70 out of 100,000 fishermen die each year. And interestingly enough, another risky job is pizza delivery drivers. 30 out of 100,000 pizza delivery drivers die each year. It's a pretty risky job. I think they get mugged a lot. They're driving to locations where they don't know where they're going, and obviously when you're rushing in a car, you're prone to accidents. So we're talking about risky jobs, and we're also talking about loops. So every single loop is going to have what's called an iteration. That is, if the statements inside that loop are executed, that is considered to be one iteration of a loop. If a loop happens twice, that'd be two iterations. Every single loop has a counter that keeps track of however many iterations there have been. And today we're going to be looking at how to create a user-controlled while loop. This is a loop that's controlled by a user's input. So let's look at our risky jobs demo. And the first thing that I'm doing here is I'm importing the decimal format class. I then import the scanner class. Here's my my class header, and then I also obviously have my main method header right here. So the first thing I do in this program is I welcome the users to the risky job demo, and then I declare two variables. I've got my int counter variable, and I go ahead and I initialize this to 1. So this is our good old buddy, the counter right here. This is going to keep track of how many times our loop iterates. And then I've got another variable right here called DBL money, and this is going to keep track of how much money we make with our risky job. I'm going to go ahead and create a formatter object called formatter, and this is going to format our DBL money variable. It's going to format any numbers in there as currency. So part 1, I print to the screen, you work 5 days as a fisherman. How much do you make? Let's assume that we make $1,000 each day as a fisherman. So here's our loop. We start out saying while int counter is less than 5, and notice up here we initialize int counter, so int counter is currently 1. So while 1 is less than or equal to 5, so is int counter less than or equal to 5? Well, it currently is 1, so yes. So that means these statements in here inside the loop, they are going to get executed. So DBL money equals 1000.00, and we put this .00 right there to tell Java that, hey, we want to multiply this by this. We want to return a double data type that's going to go into DBL money. And then we print the following to the screen. So we say day, whatever int counter is you have made, and then we format DBL money to be currency. And then of course right here we increment int counter by 1. We use this unary operator ++ to do that. If we did not have this int counter, if we did not increment the variable int counter by 1 every single time that this loop happened, then this loop would iterate forever. So right now int counter is 1, it's going to do all this stuff, and then int counter will become 2 right here. Then we go back to this statement. Well, is int counter less than or equal to 5? Well, in this case it would be 2. So it is less than or equal to 5, so that's true. Then we would do the stuff in here. Next time it would become 3. Do we do this? Yes. So it will loop until int counter is not less than or equal to 5. So if I go ahead and run this, here's what this program looks like. So here we are. Welcome to the risky job demo. You work 5 days as a fisherman. How much do you make? Day 1 you made 1,000. Day 2 you made 2,000. Day 3 you made 3,000. Day 4 you made 4,000. Day 5 you made 5,000. So here's our while loop in action. Alright, so this is what we call a programmer-defined loop, where the programmer, are the one that defines how many times this loop will iterate. It iterates 5 times. We want to create a loop where the user of the program determines how many times the loop will iterate. So let me go ahead and comment these out. Alright, part 2. So part 2 deals with a user-defined loop. We go ahead and we're going to create an additional variable called int times. I'm going to create a scanner object to read input from our user. So the scanner object is called keyboard. So we're going to print the following to the screen. We're going to ask the user, how many days will you work? That information, whatever they type, we're going to use this method, nextInt, with the keyboard object. We're going to put that into int times, and then we're going to tell the user, you work int times as a fisherman. So let's assume again, as a fisherman, our user is going to make $1,000 a day. So we set int counter equal to 1, and then here is our user-controlled loop. So while int counter is less than or equal to int times. So keep in mind that right here int counter is set equal to 1, and int times is dependent upon whatever the user enters, 3, 4, 5,000, whatever. So while int counter is less than or equal to int times, then do the following. And these statements right here are the exact same as what you saw in part 1. So if I run this, here's what's going to happen. So welcome to the Risky Jobs demo. How many days will you work? Let's say I work 10 days as a fisherman. So day 1 you made $1,000. Day 2 you made $2,000. This loop iterates all the way down here to 10, to where int counter becomes 10, and of course eventually int counter becomes 11, and 11 is not less than or equal to int times, and that causes this expression to exit us out of this while loop, so it will not iterate again. And that's what happens right here. We exit out of the loop. So this is an example of a user-controlled while loop. We also did, for part 1, we did a programmer-defined while loop, but this was the Risky Jobs demo.